Welcome back to a Guardian film show that's positively jammed-packed with sex and drugs, intrigue and murder. For some it's outlandish, even horrific, but for us, it's a way of life. We've seen it all before. We're like doctors.
I'm going to kill Snow. Nothing good is safe while he's alive. And I can't make another speech about it. Now you're talking.
She tells them if they want it done proper, they've got to strip and be measured, because it's a work...
Coming attractions on this week's show. Kate Winslet plays sharply tailored angel of vengeance in The Dressmaker. Mr. Right turns out to be all wrong, excuse the spoiler, in The Perfect Guy.
This is a relationship.
And don't be distracted by Gaspar Noé's 3D porn movie. It's really all about love. First up, it's the final part of The Hunger Games, bringing the curtain down on the smartest, toughest Hollywood blockbuster franchise of recent years. It's official. It's The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. The rebels are at the gate in Mockingjay 2, and President Snow is set to fall. But are the games really over? And is the new boss truly an improvement on the old? It seems that Jennifer Lawrence's heroine has some hard decisions to make.
Turn your weapons to the Capitol.
Joined on the couch by Henry Barnes and Benjamin Lee. Henry, taking our lead from the film here, has it all been worth it?
On balance, probably yes, just about. I mean, I think for me, it started to lose the heat a little bit after catching fire in that the idea of the games, the central conceit, was vanished. And all right, the conceit might have been nicked from Battle Royale, but it was still entertaining, and I liked the formula of that. And then once you move into the Mockingjay part, it's all very much about grubby, dirty, poor people trying to take over a citadel, which I didn't actually find that interesting.
Yeah, it becomes a bit Lord of the Rings.
It does a little bit, and you have to take a lot of their struggle on its own worth, according to what the characters tell you. I like this film more than Mockingjay Part 1, mainly because they bring some of the games back in, so you have these little traps that will go off around the city now and then. And also because, I guess with any blockbuster franchise, the sense of finality is always good.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any more of this, so you might as well enjoy it while it's here. Jennifer Lawrence, reliably great as ever, and she's really grown into the role. At times I thought she maybe seemed a little bit bored. Another interesting thing about this is that the category of 12A is pushed to its absolute limit. It's really quite frightening, quite grisly for a film.
Well, the whole
that's
city
aimed
is
at
kind of
children.
like booby-trapped, like a fun house.
Yeah, yeah, and there's this particular scene where they're running through the sewers and then they're being chased by these crazy zombie alien things, which look like something out of a video game, but they're really well done, and it's quite terrifying, that bit, and a few characters come a cropper. So, there's a sense of jeopardy, which a lot of franchises don't have. There's a sense of finality, which again, a lot of franchises don't have. But I did enjoy the first two films a lot more.
Yeah, me too. But there's a definite sense of darkness as well, isn't it? I mean, for a big popcorn munching entertainment, it's properly kind of tough and hard and dark as well.
Not just the action and the horror that happens, the ideas that are being brought up and the kind of cynical view of politics, especially for young viewers, I think is really fascinating. And the film, for the most part, is bleak until nearly the end. Some really awful things happen, and you don't see the full reaction, obviously, because they have to kind of keep the bloodshed quite minimal. But it is probably the most depressing blockbuster I can think of in recent memory.
In a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way, though. But the problem they have with the end, though, is that, and I hear it's a problem with the book too, because it is a YA novel, they want to try and bring some sort of happiness at the end, but you're so beaten down by what's happened that I was quite happy for it to end on quite a sort of dour note. They have this kind of Lord of the Rings style 10 endings in one at the end that are kind of rushed through yet seem really slow, and they kind of fumble towards a happy ending, but even Jennifer Lawrence looks like she didn't really buy it, and it kind of didn't really work for me. But yeah, I was actually quite pleased by how dark it was, but the pacing issue is all off for me, and that's kind of the problem with splitting it.
Yes, that is. I mean, and there's no real justification for that apart from the tills.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish that. Well, I mean, I kind of wish they'd just done one film because the first film was so good.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, it has to be spun out.
It has to be rolled out, and you know, it's that stretch that the Lord of the Rings went through as well, and The Hobbit. It just seems it's lazy filmmaking, it's profitable filmmaking, and that's why it gets done.
But it's still been a good franchise. I think at this point we should probably err on the side of applauding it.
Yeah, I think because the standard was set so high with the first two films that we're obviously being a bit harder on it now. But if you look at it by itself, still compared to some of the other dross that we're given, and the Divergent saga, which is incredibly dull, this is still something I think to aim for, and I think for the future too. I think if Hollywood's able to make blockbusters for a young audience with these kind of themes and this darkness and this much to it and great acting, and there's so many things to really look at this franchise, I think, and hopefully kind of learn from the future.
Oh my dear Miss Everdeen, make no mistake. The game isn't over.
Carnage, ruin, and a happy ending of sorts in The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. And it transpires that there are still more happy endings, a whole plethora of climaxes in our very next film. It's called Love, it's by Gaspar Noé, and if you're watching this at work, you may want to cover the screen with your hand at this point. I want to make movies out of blood, sperm and tears, declares young film student Murphy, and it seems he's already got at least one of those bases well and truly covered. He's mourning Electra, his libidinous ex-girlfriend, and casting his mind back through various comings and goings. He's lovesick, he's hurting, but he will soon rise again.
You're a really sweet couple. You are a really sweet neighbor.
Ben, I'm obviously too old for all this, but this must have been like a busman's holiday for you.
Yeah, this is my life. Let's have sex most days, all through the day. What's funny about the film is that usually there's kind of the cliche with watching porn films with a story that you kind of forward through all the talking bits and just want to watch the sex. But in this, I actually found the sex even duller than the talking. Every time I got the close off again, I would kind of sigh and be like, oh, really, another one? Like, by the end, it becomes, the film's almost 2.5 hours long, and the sex is very repetitive, and it's already been said that the film's a very kind of straight, white, male viewpoint of sexuality. There's a really funny scene where the main character says to his girlfriend, Electra, what's your sexual fantasy? And she's like, a three-way with a girl. And he's like, that's mine too. And then she's like, I like blonde girls. He's like, so do I. It's just kind of this typical kind of, straight white male bullshit. And there's a scene with a transsexual as well where he kind of is so repulsed by it, and you kind of feel like that's about as dark as it goes, and that's how how all the men on it should be repulsed by it. Really boring, and also the talking in the film, the dialogue is so kind of like overhearing stoned students in a common room talking about life. What's the meaning of life? I want to do this when I grow up, and I want to make these kind of films. Like, I was incredibly bored, more than I thought I'd be, given the 3D ejaculatory shots.
There's something to be said for why can't you make films about idiotic students spouting on? I mean, that's a valid subject for filmmaking, isn't it?
And spurting on as well, I guess. Yeah, it is a valid subject, and I think what Noé does really well, even when he doesn't do anything else well, is tone and mood. And like, I loved Enter the Void because of that. Like, I love that film so much, but you don't love that film necessarily because of the story. No, definitely not because of the dialogue.
No, because of the ambience.
You love it because of the ambience, exactly, and the way that he's just playful and he's just pushing things as far as he can to try and be puckish and difficult, but also to try and find something in an art form that people seem to have lost or don't seem interested in anymore. Whether he's doing that to the same extent here, I don't think you can argue that.
The problem with Enter the Void is that you actually, even though those characters were absolute screw-ups, you did end up really caring for them. Yeah. And I'm not sure I particularly cared for these two at all. I
mean, excuse the pun, I couldn't give a toss about either of these two. And I think that is part of the problem, is that, as Ben says, you want to reel through all the dialogue, you want to reel through all the sex, but then when you get to the dialogue, it's not actually that entertaining or thrilling either. And also, there's a danger when you have a 3D film, which this supposedly is, even if it's only showing at 5 cinemas, I think, after its general release, that it becomes a stunt, and it becomes all about the fact that this is 3D porno, and then inevitably you're going to get a shot of Murphy wanking off into the camera and it ejaculating all over the audience, which is a thrill, which is funny, people laughed at it at Cannes, but at the same time it is Gaspar Noé saying, I'm trying to make a serious film about love and romance, and then being puerile and being a dick about it, frankly, and just, not being able to resist that toolbox.
Good to see you.
Me too.
How are you?
Fine.
Your brother, I guess.
No, it's
Murphy, my boyfriend.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you.
I told you about him.
You're the artist.
Filmmaker.
Gaspar Noé showing a series of loving acts between 2 or more consenting adults. And lest there be any doubt that relationships cause as many problems as they solve, our next film rolls in to provide the rubber stamp. Say hello to the perfect guy.
I looked over and you looked like you needed a little help.
Business exec Leah has just met the perfect guy. He's like totally hot and charming with her parents and an all-round gentleman right up to the point where he becomes an insanely jealous psychopathic stalker. Poor Leah has just been sold a false bill of goods. Henry, I bet you didn't see this one coming.
No, I want my money back. I mean, I was expecting him to be so nice.
You pay for a perfect guy.
Yeah, and then he's so nasty. Who would have thought it? It's terrible, this, like, horrible pot boiler, 80s thriller. It's not even so bad, it's funny, really. Or maybe, because we're sat watching it in a press screening, if you're there with a bigger audience who are fully engaged with it, it might be a bit cleverer and more interesting.
Is this going to get a big audience?
Everybody's
cheering. He's perfect. No, he's not.
But it did quite well in America.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, Ben can talk on this more, but it's difficult to sell this kind of thing in the UK, I think, where the stars aren't so well known. There's not quite so much of a black cinema background, I guess, that is going to go for this. And it does feel a lot like a Shonda Rhimes TV show,
right,
but stretched into a feature-length thing without any of the cliffhanger episode endings or any way to make the characters have any more depth than just being the great guy, the nasty guy, the wronged woman who's eventually going to come back and take revenge. It's really hard to even pick anything out of this film that is remarkable. It was just a blur of bad, really.
It's a sort of cinematic staple, though, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I've got a bit of a soft spot for this kind of 90s yuppie kind of psycho thriller, like Single White Female, Hamlet's Cradle, and that sort of genre. And so I was kind of hoping that it would at least be a fun piece of trash, because earlier this year, The Boy Next Door, Jennifer Lopez film, was a guilty pleasure, because it had some silly moments. There's a bit when she gets the first edition of the Iliad. There's all these kind of odd references to her cookies as she makes them, and there's also kind of, some awful jokes about it. But this has nothing to it at all other than, you know, ticking off a checklist of cliches. It's almost like it was written by a computer. It's so functional. There's no, I think what the film needs and what this genre used to have is kind of some perversity running through it. So, you know, Single White Female, you get a stiletto being used as a murder weapon. Hamlet's Cradle, you get her breastfeeding someone else's baby. You get something odd happening.
Yes.
In this, the weirdest thing he does is put her toothbrush in his mouth, like, briefly. And even then I was
Suck
like,
it for quite a long time.
And then I was like, it's going to get weirder now. But nothing weirder than that happens.
Yeah.
Nothing silly than that happens. And this is a guy who's a stalker who's sexually obsessed with a woman, and you think he'd do something weirder or something weirder would happen. But it's like Henry was saying, it's so by the book. It's like watching a TV film.
Yeah, it's striking how boring he is for a bad guy. Like, for a guy who's driven to murder, he is really quite dull.
He steals a cat but doesn't kill it. And these films are always, they always have a dead pet in them.
Yeah.
I was waiting for the cat
It's
to
like
kill.
Chekhov's gun on the mantelpiece. If you steal a cat,
Yeah.
the cat has to wind up dead.
Drown in the swimming pool or something. But no, the cat is fine. And if that's the worst you can say about the film, I guess.
The cat is
The
fine.
cat is fine.
What are you doing, man? She doesn't want anything to do with you, okay? So maybe it's time you take the hint and move along.
Look at her. Yeah. Probably remembering the sex right now.
Hey, whoa. Shut up! You mess with her again, you even look at her again, I'm gonna wipe that smug look off your face. Permanently.
Schlock horror aplenty in The Perfect Guy. As ever, though, we look to the luminous Kate Winslet to provide a little class. Here she is as the dressmaker in a period drama, except that she's about to run her hand right through the sewing machine.
She's back! The murderess is back!
Here comes Tilly, back from Paris to small-town 50s Australia, a homecoming queen who may just be a murderess. The locals can't stand her, and Tilly hates them right back. The dressmaker is plotting a terrible revenge, and by the end credits, she'll have us all in stitches. Ben, did this succeed where The Perfect Guy didn't in being so bad it's good?
Almost. I was willing it to, because especially for the first half, it's so batty. And there are so many strange things going on, but the problem becomes that the director, Jocelyn Moorhouse, gives herself too much to try and manage. So she has it's almost like she's kind of looking after a bunch of really unruly kids for a day, because you have all these larger-than-life characters screeching at each other, people being pushed into houses, people falling over, people being killed, kids being killed, people being raped, people like there's so much going on, and
so many horrible things, and then just kind of like cheap laughs and a sentimental kind of sitcom-y score over the top of it.
It's such a weird jumble, and I think it took a much more skilled director perhaps to try and actually manage all of this mayhem. Judy Davis actually is kind of the only person who seems to get the tone right. She's kind of fun as Kate Winslet's feral mother, but the tone of the film is so uneven. It's like watching a cartoon at times. Everyone's kind of screeching and performing and using their hands, and at times it's so annoying to watch. But kind of interesting when it's in the crazier moments. Then near the end, it wants to have its cake and eat it and becomes really sentimental, and there's tragedy, and you're supposed to care about these cartoon characters, which doesn't really work. So I'm kind of still fascinated by the film, but I don't like it.
I thought it was awful.
It's wonky every which way, but I kind of loved it. I think
you?
It might be a Paperboy.
It certainly has an element of that.
It reminded me of nothing less than Super Vixens by Russ Meyer.
No, Super Vixens is great.
Well, Super Vixens is great, but Super Vixens is another story of small town eccentricity and weirdness. How these places left out on their own in the middle of nowhere can just become like breeding grounds for the strangest people who do the most horrible things to each other, but still come through with a kind of nod and a wink.
So you've got Hugo Weaving as cross-dressing cop.
Yeah.
You've got the obligatory village idiot.
You've got the village idiot. You've got the
hunchback.
hunchback.
Dodgy as hell, the hunchback.
Yeah. You've got the strapping lad who falls into the... Yeah. What else have you got? There's Judy Davis, who's playing the
Mad Molly.
Mad Molly.
But Super Vixens knew what it was doing, and as Ben said, this film doesn't. This film has this crisis of confidence and identity all the way through.
This film threatens to know what it's doing. In the first hour, you think, oh God, this is it's spicy and interesting, and badly made, but fantastically badly made. And then, Ben's right, you have to take it seriously, and you're invited to care about the characters, and you think, oh, you've lost me there. But in that first hour, I had a lot of fun. I was giggling away at the various exploits, the Australian rules football match ruined by Kate Winslet turning up and flashing her boobs all over the place. It's, it is bizarre. And it's also the third in a kind of Winslet bonkers trilogy of films, which is Labour Day, and then A Little Chaos, and then this one, of her just taking on these films that are tonally all over the place, but completely bad, but very interesting to watch as well. So I wonder what it'd be like to watch a triple bill of these movies and just sit there and take in the madness.
I thought she was terrible in this. I thought she didn't know what she was doing. She looked really ill at ease.
But this is at least interesting for her, because I think she's picked quite a lot of Oscar bait projects since gaining 5-6 nominations, and this at least you can't call this Oscar bait at all, because it's so batty. Labour Day was really embarrassing Oscar bait. A Little Chaos was maybe a favour, or because she owed money to Alan Rickman, and this I've no idea.
You just called me Tilly.
When?
Just then.
Oh, I never.
Yes, you did. And this morning, twice.
Oh, liar. Oh.
Sounds like this is the most important piece of clothing I'll ever own.
Playing now on A Loop in Hell. That's the Dressmaker. And that's it from us. It's high time we zipped up these proceedings. My thanks to Ben and to Henry and to you for watching. New show, better films. Same time next week. Hello, it's the Guardian film show in which a bunch of cantankerous, malodorous critics steer a virtual van right up your drive. Provided you let us use the facilities, we may consent to stay for years.